What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Guys at Magic. Today we have a super special episode. We are doing the $100 upgrade for the Revenant Recon pre-constructed deck. This is one of the 4 precons that came out with the Murders at Karlov Manor set. So super excited to go over all of this. And join me here today, we do have Hunter, who's the genius behind this upgrade.
Yeah, what's up? Yours truly.
So the way that this works is we did a $100 upgrade for this. So Hunter kind of got the reins on that. Before we dive in with what you upgraded this with, do me a huge favor. Just go ahead and talk about this deck just as a whole, straight out of the box. What is a suggested legendary creature that you home with it? And what are your just general thoughts and impressions on the themes?
Yeah, so I was able to get the Revenant Recon deck. It is the Demir deck. Normally, if you guys have been watching this channel for a long time, you've kind of already seen David do the Boros one. I'm doing the Demir one. We're switching it up. We're going away from our normal play pattern. But the Demir one is helmed by Mirko, Obsessive Theorist. It is a blue, a black for a 1/3 legendary creature vampire detective. It's got flying and vigilance, and it says whenever you surveil, put a +1/+1 counter on Mirko, Obsessive Theorist, and it also says at the beginning of your end step, you may return target creature card with power less than Mirko's from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. That's right, finality counters are back. A little reminder, if it would die with a finality counter on it, it is exiled instead. Also, for those that are new, if you don't know what Surveil is, well, imagine it like Scry, but instead of putting it on the bottom, you could put it in your graveyard.
All right, so we've got a commander that comes out relatively cheap, has the tendency to grow over the course of the game, and has some reanimator shenanigans going on.
Yeah, I love this card. It's going to be a lot of fun. Interestingly enough, I did mention I don't normally do Demir, except here we are with the +1/+1 counter theme again.
Can't get away from it.
Can't get away from it. But giving this flying and vigilance and coming down for 3 mana early, very cool.
All right, so let's go ahead and dive in with some of those new ads. What are some of the cards that you threw in this that you think are going to make this hum a little bit more?
So something that you guys have seen that I like to do is I like to go to the set that the precons came from, take a look around, see what I can pull from the set into the precons to make it a little better. So these are all brand new cards from Murders at Karlov Manor. This first one is called Drag the Canal. It is just a blue and a black for an instant. This says create 2/2 white and blue detective creature token. If a creature died this turn, you gain 2 life, surveil 2, and then investigate. Does a lot for just 2 mana. It's really awesome. Makes a body, hits that surveil that our commander really wants. Investigate so we can draw a card off that clue. Gain 2 life. It's a really good card.
Yeah, I can definitely see the synergy here. It kind of does exactly, well, everything that this deck wants to do.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Another card we're throwing in here is Candlestick. It is just 1 blue mana for an artifact. It's a clue equipment. It says equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has, whenever this creature attacks, surveil 2. Has ability where you can pay 2, sacrifice Candlestick, draw a card, and an equip cost of 2. So you can put this down early, get her commander out, attach this to her commander, and now our commander's power is a little bit bumped because of that +1/+1 ability. And whenever it attacks with a good old vigilance, so it stays untapped, it's going to surveil, triggering itself, and then hopefully we can get a card back from the graveyard early on.
I mean, there is very few things in all of Magic that is more terrifying than a flying vampire coming at you with a candlestick.
Yeah, watch out, man. But not only that, but late game, when this is useless, go ahead and sacrifice it and draw a card. It's a really good flexible card. I really didn't like the land cycle from this, but because our commander likes to surveil, I'm throwing in the new one for Demir. It's Undercity Sewers. It's a land that is an island and swamp. You can tap it to add a blue or black. It enters the battlefield tapped, which is unfortunate, but it says when it enters the battlefield, you surveil 1. So for commanders on the field, we throw this down, we just get a counter just right away. It's really good.
So those are all cards from the set itself. What about digging back a little bit more throughout Magic's history? What other kind of gems did you find?
Yeah, so I'm just going to put this card up by itself. This is Soul Diviner. It is just a blue and a black for a 2/3 creature zombie wizard. You can tap it, remove a counter from an artifact, creature, land, or planeswalker you control, and draw a card. You might be thinking, well, that's a weird ad, but let me tell you what. Removing a counter, it doesn't say what kind of counter. So all those pesky finality counters that make our things go away if they die, exiled, well, we're going to remove that to draw a card. So finality is going to be great by me.
I can definitely see the inclusion there, be able to reanimate your targets maybe multiple times, and also provide that card draw. I like this card a lot.
Yeah, it's really good in this deck. Moving on, we are a reanimate deck, so I'm going to throw in my two favorite cards in the mirror. It's Jin Gataxias, Progress Tyrant. It's 5 and 2 blue for a 5/5 legendary creature, Phyrexian Praetor. It says whenever you cast an artifact, instant, or sorcery spell, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. This ability triggers only once each turn, and has another ability where it says whenever an opponent casts an artifact, instant, or sorcery spell, counter that spell. This ability triggers only once each turn. So if this is on the field, your opponents are going to hate you because they cannot deal with it unless they cast multiple spells a turn, because we will always counter that first one.
Yeah, Jin's a big meanie. What's the second card though?
Oh, the second is one of my favorites. It is Toxtrol the Corrosive. It's 5 and 2 black for a 7/7 legendary creature, Slug Horror. It says at the beginning of each end step, put a slime counter on each creature you don't control. And creatures you don't control get -1/-1 for each slime counter on them. It also says whenever a creature you don't control with a slime counter on it dies, create a 1/1 black slug creature token. And another ability that says you can pay a blue and a black, sacrifice a slug to draw a card. So every end step, that includes all of your opponents. So your opponent's things are going to die very quick in one turn cycle. And we're going to be making a bunch of slugs. We can sacrifice, draw cards. Great card draw engine. Toxtrol is so mean.
Yeah, Toxtrol is wonderful just as an engine on its own. It does draw a pretty significant amount of hate though.
Yeah, it does. And if we have this out with a finality counter, hopefully we have that Soul Diviner in there so we can get rid of it and keep it around.
I do see that we have a little bit of a Planeswalker package here. What is this?
Yeah, I've just thrown in one Planeswalker. It's good old Vraska Betrayal Sting. It's for a black and a Phyrexian black. It has a starting loyalty of 6. It is completed, which means that black can be paid with either a black or 2 life. If it was paid with life, it will enter with 2 fewer loyalty counters on it, so keep that in mind. It has a 0 ability that says you draw a card and lose 1 life, proliferate. It has a -2 ability that says target creature becomes a treasure artifact with tap, sacrifice this artifact, add 1 mana of any color, and loses all other card types and abilities. And a -9, which is the ultimate, that says if target player has fewer than 9 poison counters, they get a number of poison counters equal to the difference. So poison is not necessarily our strategy here, but if for whatever reason Vraska is an ultimate, might as well give someone 9 poison counters. But that 0 ability where you can draw a card, lose a life, and proliferate, if our commander's on the field and already has one of those counters, just keep ticking that up as well as drawing cards and ticking Vraska up. It's also a fantastic removal on a stick here, just making something into a treasure. It's like, sorry about it. You have a treasure now, though. So
You know, I really do like this card, especially since you can proliferate and add an additional finality counter onto your things. I like that.
you don't have to. Don't listen to David.
I see we also happen to have a couple of instants and sorceries. You've got some goodies in here.
Yeah, so let's talk about we are reanimator deck. So why not add the two most important reanimate kind of package to get the stuff going into the graveyard? First up, Buried Alive, 2 and a black, sorcery. Search your library for up to 3 creature cards, put them into your graveyard, then shuffle your library. And also Entomb, which is 1 black mana for an instant that says search your library for a card, put that card into your graveyard, then shuffle. So if we have those nice, cool reanimator cards already in our hand, or our commander is pretty powerful, play these, get them on the field quickly.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, if you're playing a reanimation style package, these are the like hallmark cards to make your deck more consistent.
hmm Also, we're throwing in a new board wipe. It is good old Damnation. 2 and 2 black sorcery, destroy all creatures that can't be regenerated. Easy to the point. Probably my favorite board wipe in all of black. I know yours is Toxic Deluge, but good news, David. Toxic Deluge came in this deck already.
Yep. If it wasn't already in the precon and you added damnation over it, you would have made me sad. But totally understand the inclusion for both.
hmm
And it looks like we have one new artifact and one new enchantment as well.
Yeah, so similar to Vraska doing that proliferate thing, we have Sword of Truth and Justice for 3 mana. It's an artifact equipment that says equip creature gets +2/+2 and has protection from white and from blue. And it says whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on a creature you control, then proliferate. It's also got an equipped cost of 2. So, kind of like Candlestick, if this comes down and we attach it to our commander, it gets that power boost, so we can potentially go ahead and reanimate something faster than we would have if we didn't have this. And just being able to put another counter on something and proliferate is really good. It also protects us from anything like Path to Exile, Swords of Plowshares, just all those pesky white removals.
Fun fact, this also protects your commander from Candlestick.
Yes. Yes, it does.
Cannot dual wield both a sword and a candlestick.
The other card I'm adding in here is Search for Azcanta. It is 1 and a blue for a legendary enchantment. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. You may put it into the graveyard. Then if you have 7 or more cards in your graveyard, you may transform Search for Azcanta. Guess what? That was errata to say at the beginning of your upkeep, Surveil 1. So this does actually do Surveil, even though it's kind of just saying it in the long form. If it is transformed, it turns into Azcanta the Sunken Ruin. It's a legendary land. You can tap it to add a blue, or you could pay 2 and a blue, tap it, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a non-creature, non-land card from among them, put it in your hand, and then it says put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Now, this is a really powerful enchantment in this deck because like it says at the beginning of your upkeep, you're going to be surveilling. We're going to get that counter if our commander's on the field. We're going to be throwing stuff in the graveyard if we need it to go in the graveyard. I don't know how often I'm going to flip this because of that. So it is good when it is flipped, but that first part really helps our commander.
Yeah, some nice synergies there. Plus, this card just on its own, such a powerful engine. And I'm a little disappointed that it was errata just to say Surveil. I like the much longer, windier version.
And the much longer, windier version is not needed.
And we kind of alluded to the fact that the mana base wasn't your favorite straight out of the precon. I see that you're kind of tweaking that as well.
I am tweaking that. I'm adding a couple of colorless lands and also a bond land. So Karn's Bastion is getting into the deck. I don't know why it wasn't in the precon in the first place. Sometimes they just don't like to throw normal precon cards in the precon for whatever reason. It's a land that can tap for a colorless, or you can pay 4, tap it, and proliferate. Once again, we want our commander to continue growing with all those counters. So Karn's Bastion is great in this deck. Nesting Grounds is going in here too. You can tap it to add a colorless. Or you can pay 1, tap it, move a counter from target permanent you control onto another target permanent, activate only a sorcery. Guess what? We can move those finality counters on our opponent's things. That's pretty mean. And Morphic Pool enters the battlefield tapped unless you have 2 or more opponents. You can tap to add a blue or black. It should be in every precon deck. All these cards all the time.
Yep, completely agree with you there. All right, so in order to make room for those new fun little includes, sadly, we do have to cut some things. I see this first card that you removed. Let's go ahead and get out of the way. Make sure everybody down below comment as to why he shouldn't have removed this card.
Yeah, this is the backup commander to the deck. I love this card so much. But let me tell you why it's taken out. It is Marvo Deep Operative. It's 3, a blue, and a black for a 1/8 legendary creature Octopus Rogue. It says whenever it attacks, clash with defending player. What does that mean? Well, each clashing player reveals the top card of their library, then puts that card on the top or bottom. A player wins if their card had a higher mana value. It also says whenever you win a clash, draw a card. Then you may cast a spell from your hand with mana value 8 or less without paying its mana cost. Awesome card. I love this card so much, but the real reason I'm cutting it out is because this wants to helm a deck of its own. I want to build around this so badly, but it's not going to be in this one. We're trying to reanimate stuff. I know if we had our big reanimate targets in our hand, then yeah, this is cool. But it's not always going to happen. We're going to be able to manipulate the top of our deck to get our reanimate targets in the graveyard. Yeah, this Marvo Deep Operative, really cool card. Just not going to make it in this deck.
All right, fine. I'll give you a pass, but I'm still sad.
2 other creatures here. Whispering Snitch is 1 under black for a 1/3 creature vampire rogue. Whenever you surveil the first time each turn, Whispering Snitch deals 1 damage to each opponent and you gain 1 life. Just a one-time effect just to ping your opponents 1 time and gain a life. Not going to do it enough for me. Copy Catchers is a brand new card in this deck. It's 1 and a blue for a 2/1 creature fairy. It's got flying. It says whenever you surveil, you may pay a 1 and a blue. If you do, create a token that's a copy of Copy Catchers. This is a really weird card. I saw this and I was like, that's a cool effect. You're just going to make a bunch of 2/1s over and over and over. And then you realize they're just making a copy of themselves, which makes you have to pay 2 on them as well. So then it gets out of hand quickly because you don't have unlimited mana. So it's going to be very, very mana intensive. So Copy Catchers, cool card, just not in the deck.
Yeah, I totally see the cut there. Although I'm not gonna lie, I'm very fine with my opponent spending their entire turn making copies of this creature.
Yeah. I'll make another 2/1. I'll make another 2/1. I'll make another. Yeah, that's fine.
Now, there are what looks to be maybe 2 reanimation targets that got cut from this deck. What are these?
Yeah, so because we're adding some big targets like Toxel and Jin Cataxius, we got to cut a little bit more off the top as well, so we're not just overwhelmed with too many big creatures. So the ones that I'm cutting is Overseer of the Damned. It's 5 and 2 black for a 5/5 creature demon. It's got flying. It says whenever it enters the battlefield, you may destroy target creature, and whenever a non-token creature an opponent controls dies, create a tapped 2/2 black zombie creature token. Ultimately, I looked at, is Toxtrol better than this? And I said, yeah, it is. So Overseer of the Damned is going to get out of the deck, unfortunately. Dream Eater, also leaving the deck here, is 4 and 2 blue for a 4/3 with flash. It's got flying. And it says when it enters the battlefield, surveil 4. When you do, you may return target non-land permanent and opponent controls to its owner's hand. If I'm leaving up 6 mana to flash this in, I'm probably doing something wrong. Because Surveil 4 is cool and all, but just bouncing one thing is not enough for 6 mana.
Yeah, I can see that. I do want to like this card, but not quite doing enough. A couple of instants and sorceries looks like they got the axe as well. Ooh, some of these look a little mana intensive.
Yeah, this new card also in this deck is called Counterpoint. It's 3 a black and a blue for an instant. Counter target spell. You may cast a creature, instant, sorcery, or planeswalker spell from your graveyard with mana value less than or equal to that spell's mana value without paying its mana cost. A lot of the times, I'm going to be countering things that target my creatures, which is probably a removal spell, which normally isn't that expensive. So am I really paying 5 mana to counter something like that and maybe not even get the second part because it's such a small mana value? Probably not. So I looked at this card and said, this is too much to counter something. I'm going to get rid of it.
That's a bit expensive.
hmm Another thing that's a bit expensive is Black Sun Zenith. It's X and 2 black for a sorcery. It says put X -1/-1 counters on each creature. Shuffle Black Sun Zenith into its owner's library. Now, I did add some cards that are able to proliferate, and it is putting -1/-1 counters on stuff. So I could proliferate my opponent's creatures into dying, which is a pretty cool synergy there. But it's not guaranteed I'm going to have enough mana to wipe the board when I draw this. So I got to kind of wait. I think we have Toxic Deluge, which is 3 mana, and Damnation, which is 4 mana. So I don't need to go heavy with this card. And I'm also getting rid of another new card. You guys are like, oh my god, you're getting rid of all the new cards. Yeah, I'm sorry. Charnel Serenade, 4 and 2 black for a sorcery that says Surveil 3. Then return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. Exile Charnel Serenade with 3 time counters on it. It's also got a suspend of 3 for 2 and a black. Man, this was one of my last cuts I did. I like this card a lot. But ultimately, for 6 mana, if I had this going in my hand, I'm probably going to want to cast it immediately instead of suspending it. And I get it, it never goes away, and that's why I had a real tough time cutting it. But I'm trying to cast other things.
I actually do like the removal of this. Suspend is a mechanic that I've never been high on. I think that you cast this for 6 and then you may never see it again. All right, it looks like you have a couple of artifacts that are also going to be getting the cut here. Take it you're not all aboard this first one?
I am not all aboard the foreboding steamboat. It's 3 and 2 black for a 5/7 artifact vehicle. It says when it enters the battlefield, each player chooses 2 non-land, non-vehicle creatures they control. Exile them until foreboding steamboat leaves the battlefield. And whenever this attacks, you can put a card exiled with it into its owner's graveyard. If you do, investigate. Crew cost of 2. I mean, yeah, it's cool. It's 5 mana for a 5/7 with crew cost at 2. But the abilities are kind of just slow. It's a really weird removal thing that doesn't necessarily remove them completely because you're exiling them and then you're going to put it back in the graveyard, so you're not really exiling. So if you're playing someone that's got a reanimation package as well, it's not helping. I don't know. It's not even a May, so you have to put them back in the graveyard.
You know what? Actually, I'm here for this just because, like, I don't know, for flavor reasons, it's like this magical steamboat just shows up and abducts you in the middle of the night for some like shipwreck horror ride, and I don't know. I'm I'm in love with this card, just not for this deck.
Yeah, exactly. Another card I'm getting rid of is Ever-Flowing Chalice. It's a 0 mana cost for an artifact with a multi-kicker of 2, which means you can pay an additional 2 any number of times you want. And as this enters the battlefield with a charge counter on it, for each time it was kicked, you can tap it to add a colorless for each charge counter on it. It's very mana intensive. So basically, if you wanted to tap similarly to a Soul Ring, you're going to have to pay 4 for Ever-Flowing Chalice. I think it's just too mana intensive. I would rather spend my mana elsewhere, and we have plenty of mana rocks in the deck. Another card I am getting rid of, believe it or not, it is another new card. I'm sorry. It's called Ransom Note. It's 1 mana for an artifact clue. It says whenever Ransom Note enters the battlefield, surveil 1. As another ability, you can pay 2, sacrifice Ransom Note, choose 1. You can cloak the top card of your library, you can go target creature, you can draw a card. I get it. We do the surveil thing. That's really cool. And then you can pay 2 and draw a card. It's just didn't do enough. It's cool. I mean, this is in every single one of these precons from this set because, believe it or not, each one of these modes that it does, including the surveil one just for me, the other ones also kind of do something for the other decks. So just kind of a flexible option for all the decks.
Yeah, I'm seeing all these cards that you cut from this precon. I'm beginning to wonder, were there any of the new cards that you enjoyed, or were they just like all very offensive?
There are plenty of new cards that I kept in the deck, okay? I like it.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and take a quick look at the lands. Oh my goodness, Steven is gonna be so upset with you.
The first one I'm getting rid of is Ash Barrens. It's a land. You can tap it to add a colorless. It's got basic land cycling 1. That's it. Job done. Ash Baron's not that good of a card, especially since we're adding 2 other colorless lands. We don't need that many colorless lands. And yes, you alluded to Steven. Steven, you do like this card, Mirrored Landscape. Enters battlefield tapped. You could tap it to add a colorless, or you could pay 2, tap it, sacrifice it, search the library for up to 2 basic land cards to share land type. Put them on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. I'm not trying to use 3 mana sources to get 1 extra land. That ain't it.
Yeah, I hate this card as well. So let's move on to my all-time favorite.
It's Temple of the False God. Tap it, add 2 colorless. Activate only if you control 5 or more lands. Yup, that's you said it in your video, I believe. You said you're probably going to guarantee this always in your opening hand, and if it's not in your opening hand, it's your first card you draw, and you're really sad because you're not going to have the activation for a while.
I think that Wizards actually puts Temple of the False God into their precons to make things a little bit easier for people who like do these upgrades. It just gives them a card right off the bat that's just like, here, without thinking, just get rid of this.
Exactly. And the final land I am taking out of this deck is Port of Carfell. It is a land that always enters the battlefield tapped. You can tap to add a blue, or you could pay 3, a blue and 2 black. Tap it, sacrifice Port of Carfell, mill 4 cards, then return a creature card from the graveyard to the battlefield tapped. It's a lot of steps just to reanimate something. And to be honest, it's a really slow land. So it's leaving the deck.
Understandable. It kind of just does the exact same thing that your commander wants to do, but way more expensive.
Yeah. So it takes 7 mana sources to go ahead and mill 4 and reanimate something tapped.
All in all, though, I gotta say, generally speaking, I'm pretty impressed for this. For those of you who are watching at home, do keep in mind, as we do the upgrade videos for this, a lot of the newer cards are kind of still trying to figure out what their pricing is. But at least as of the time of this recording, Hunter, how much of your budget did you spend?
Yeah, so at the time of recording this video, if you went to TCG Player and took all the cheapest prices you could find for each printing of each card, it's $102.18. But, like you said, prices of the new cards are fluctuating, so I do believe stuff like Drag the Canal, that'll come down in price for a little bit. So this will probably be when this set's released, just under $100.
All right, not bad. So, any closing thoughts? Any final statement regarding this deck? Is this something that you would recommend to a newer player? First precon, maybe?
Oh, absolutely. I think most people around the Magic community agree that this is probably the best value out of the box. Not just the card itself. The card itself, Mirko Obsessive Theorist, is a lot of fun. Whenever you can do the reanimate thing, it's a lot of fun. I think Wizards has been doing that constantly, and like I feel like every other precon is just a reanimate package somewhere. We saw it just in the last one, the finality counters. So here we are again. But I think go ahead and pick this up. It's a cheap cost commander, which is nice. Does a really cool thing. And yeah, I'm very excited to play this deck against you guys.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for those of you who stuck around to this point in the video. Do make sure that you like and subscribe. I know that you probably have already, though. Also, please make sure you can check down in the description below to find the Moxfield link for this upgrade, so you can go ahead and just kind of copy and paste from there. For those of you who want to check us out on our other social media, we are on Instagram, Twitter, and we are also on TikTok. If you would like to support us even more than what you already do, though, we have a Patreon. The link will be down in the description below. And a quick little shout out and a special thank you to all of our patrons who are currently bouncing around our screen. So special thank you from Guys at Magic. And as always, thank you so much once again. This has been Guys at Magic. Until next time, peace.
Later.